Hey y'all, it's your girl, Dr. Makeba, host of the Healthy Woman Podcast, a talk therapy platform curating healthy conversations so that women like you can serve God while also pursuing an optimal state of holistic health. Hey y'all, welcome to the Healthy Woman Podcast. Another episode with me, your girl, Dr. Makeba. I'm so excited that you all are here. Let's get this out of the way. If you are a guest or a stranger, or you've happened to roll across this podcast on your own, or maybe somebody sent you an episode, I don't know what happened. But if this is your first time here, I want to welcome you to the Healthy Woman Pod. You are no longer a stranger. You're actually family now. So thank you for being here. And then, of course, if you are one of the OG family members, I like to call it the original gangster family members, either you have connected with me on the social media platforms, or you know me personally, or you've heard my content somewhere, and you're familiar with me, and you are a regular on the Healthy Woman Pod, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for being loyal and for just your commitment to sharing out this podcast, talking it over with your girlfriends or whoever you have conversation with. Thank you so much. Remember, the one thing that I need for you all to do is to share this episode out with just one girlfriend. We don't need to share it out with 100 different people. That's too much of a weight for you to carry. I just want you to commit to sharing out to one girlfriend, and that will allow us to increase our impact immediately, just double, right? We'll be able to double our impact, double our reach, with you just making a decision to share it out with one extra person. So whoever that is, go ahead and get it in your mind now. And probably when we're finished doing what we're doing today, because I have an amazing episode for you today. But even after you finish listening to this episode, you may decide, oh, I know who needs to hear this. Let me share it out with her. And it might turn out to be two girlfriends. Who knows? But share it out with whoever you feel needs to hear what we're talking about today. And I will be eternally grateful. So, you all, listen, this is episode 3. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that this is just chugging along. If you don't know the story behind the Healthy Woman Podcast, I'm not going to go into it today. I'm not going to go into it today, but I will say that it's important for you to get an understanding from God what He wants you to do. It's important for you to understand the reason why you are here on earth, why you are here to do what you're supposed to be doing, why He actually took time out to create you in His image to do what He wants you to do on this earth. And the reason why that's important is because we all have a purpose. And this podcast happens to be a part of my purpose. And it is a manifestation of a prayer that I prayed for so long, asking God, what am I here to do? And if you don't know, this podcast is literally just a reflection of my life's journey. It's a reflection. Within the Healthy Woman, I'm not a medical doctor. So the physical part of this podcast, the physical health part of this podcast is not from my medical expertise. It's from my medical journey as a woman, as a Black woman, as an individual who's lived on this earth, occupied space on this earth for 50 years now. And I've been fortunate to experience some things with my body, with my mental health, with my emotional health, with my psychological health, financially, and of course, through my spiritual walk with God and the maturity, the processing of maturity that He has taken me through, the spiritual development that God has allowed me to attain, while working with other people, while talking to other people, while reading His word and doing the different things that I've done. My journey in life has brought me to this place. And when I had a conversation with God sometime earlier last year, and I said to Him, after chasing down a lot of information, at that time it was about my physical health. But then after chasing that information down and coming to a bunch of different epiphanies and realizing that the information that I've come across and the knowledge that I have attained and um, um, the journeys that I've taken, other women are taking, and the information that I've acquired, they don't know. And so I asked God, I said, how can I use my platform to be able to help develop your daughters and to put them in a position where they can be optimally ready to pursue purpose your way? How can I do that? How can I use my platform for that? And immediately God gave me the desire of the podcast, amongst other things. But what I've learned, and my guests and I were just talking about this, what I've learned is that you cannot come into the knowing of what God wants you to do when you're busy occupying yourself chasing other things. When you're busy occupying yourself chasing other um, worldly things or other things that might be self serving or self satisfying. And that's what I found myself doing for so long. And so when I finally said, God, yes, I'm done. I'm tired. I've used up almost 50 years, 25 plus years of my life trying to do my own thing. My yes is to you. I started getting all of these great ideas to do things. And so the Healthy Woman podcast is one of those ideas. So if you've ever wondered if this is a Makeba thing or if this is a God thing, let me just go ahead and make it clarify it for you. This is a God thing, and I'm very honored to be used to do this. And so today, I have the distinct privilege and honor of talking to a friend of mine that I met here in Chicago. As you all know, I'm not from Chicago. And it took me a long time to meet women, to meet people, but women specifically, because I am a woman and a Black woman at that. It took me a long time to meet women and quality women who are actually worth building relationship with and actually finding my space in their life and them finding their space in my life. And all of the women that I meet, we're not super close, tight girlfriends or anything like that. But when we get together, we can pick up where we left off. And there's a sense of like a sense of pride and just appreciation for everything that they're doing. And this particular doctor, yep, I'm interviewing, I'm talking to, I'm having a conversation with another doctor, African American woman who wears a number of different hats. And we're going to jump into the wearing of those hats on today's episode. But her name is Dr. Shaniqua Jones, and she is going to tell you a little bit about herself in a few minutes. But I met her. We'll talk about how we met in more detail in a few minutes. But I met her in my former job, and she was a client of mine, and we were working together to try to get her in different spaces and get her I think government certified and different things like that. But out of that came this type of a relationship where I can actually dive into the crux of her life and really be inspired by her journey and what she's been able to go through. So without further ado, y'all help me welcome to the Healthy Woman podcast on this good day, Dr. Shaniqua Jones. What's up, girl?
Hey, what's going on?
I'm so happy to have you here, Doc. Oh my God. This is episode number 3. We've I've been very specific and very particular about who I wanted to bring on the podcast in the early stages of it, because people are still trying to they're trying to learn this space, right? This platform. They like, okay, I like the Healthy Woman podcast, but I got to make sure, that the people that Dr. Makeba is putting in front of me are like legit people, right? And I want to protect the platform. I want to protect the integrity of such. And so I reached out to you even before it launched. And I reached out to you. I'm Dr. Shaniqua and I are friends on Facebook. And God, she's such a transparent, just such a transparent person. And some would say maybe she's too transparent. I'm sure you've heard that. I've heard that from time to time. Like, you share too much. I'm like, listen, you don't know the call of my life, and you don't know who the people are that are assigned to me. And every time I share something, I have people in my inbox thanking me and appreciating what I've shared because it's helped them. So don't question the stuff that I share. Just work on yourself and all of that. But she and I she had made a post on there, and I responded to her post in a certain way. And I responded to her post in a certain way, and then like she responded in another post, and I was like, oh shoot, man, I think I said something that I shouldn't have said on her post. I said, because she like explained like this whole post, and I know I didn't, but I was like, this is the type of person that Shaniqua is. Like, she's gonna say what's on her mind, and she's going to co-sign, if you will, on other posts if she feels like it's applicable to her life. And this particular post is applicable. And I responded in a way that brought a different perspective. And when I looked at your follow-up post and I was like, yeah, I need to have, like, it had been confirmed at that point in time that we needed to have a conversation one-on-one because I want to know the real Dr. Shaniqua, right? And we've spoken before on another platform when I was doing like a business thing, but that was like business and that was some of the other stuff. This is different. And so as I tell all of my guests, I invite you to be as transparent and open as you feel comfortable being. If there's something that, you're not comfortable talking about, I totally respect it. I understand it. But I do want to share who you are, kind of the journey that you've been on, the journey that you're on now, how you've grown from it, how it's challenged you, and all of that good stuff. And so, without further ado, I want you to tell us about the real Dr. Jones. Who are you?
I'm love personified. That's the best way I can put it. That's typically my answer. At first, I used to answer that way because it sound good, but I answer that way because that is exactly who I am.
Love personified.
Love personified.
So when you say love, so I like love personified. Anything that has to do with love, like I'm gonna question. I want to know more about love personified because I can see through your post, and just from knowing you and having conversation with you, that you are love. Like you're the essence of love. Love personified, and so through different perceptions of what love is, how would you describe the person of love that you are and that you show to the people that you have relationship with? Because you're a mom, you're a wife, you're still a daughter. You're still a daughter, even though you're still a daughter. You're a friend, you are a ministry leader, you're a business owner, you're all these different people. Do you personify love in the same way to everybody?
I do.
Okay.
If I could add to it, I grew up always telling everyone I'm the youngest of 4 and I'm the only girl. And my brother used to say, it can't be that much love in the world. And it wasn't until I allowed the enemy and the streets to kind of take control of my life from the age of 15 to 26, I became someone I couldn't recognize. So the loving girl that I was growing up became to be like this hateful young lady that felt like the world was against her. So to be able to be redeemed and restored from that and go back to the essence of the foundation that my mother taught me in terms of loving God, it's more than just reading the Bible, it's being able to apply it. So even when you think of some of the challenges that I faced in the past, that currently my challenges look totally different, but they're still challenges nonetheless. If I can forgive the person who raped me and still pray for his soul, to me, that's love personified. To some of the even more egregious situations beyond that particular circumstance, I'm gonna love you. I don't have to like you. I don't have to be in your presence or in close proximity to you, but I don't wish any harm. And I pray that whatever God did for me to redeem me, that he does the same for you.
I think that that's the key. I think there's a couple of things that you said that I think are very key. Number one, I love you, but I don't have to like you. And I don't have to be in your presence. And I don't have to spend time with you. And I don't necessarily have to give my ear to you. But I think sometimes we get it confused that it's hard for me to love you because that means that I have to like what you do. I have to like who you are. I have to spend time with you because the only way that I can show you that I love you is through actions, right? Because we've heard so many times love is an action word, but then we get it confused with action actually having to be a tangible action, right? And not necessarily, like you said, a forgivable action. Right. So I think that was key. And then the other thing that I thought that was really interesting, I was just listening to a podcast prior to coming here, podcast episode, and the young lady who I was listening to was talking about how God redeemed her. And even as far back as before the early part of last year, how now she's such a different person because she intentionally recognized the redeeming authority and the power that God had over her life, to where even if she wanted to go back to that person, she realized that person is not there.
Send that podcast to me.
I will.
Yes.
Absolutely will.
That's exactly where I'm at in my life. even to the point where I have people who are in my circle of influence, like, just don't get it. Like, you need to spaz out one good time.
Mhm.
And then what? I don't even have that in me.
Mhm.
So I'm grateful.
It's literally what she said.
Wow.
That she literally said her friend was like, I know you. I cannot believe that you're not doing this and going off or whatever. And she was like, it's not even in me no more.
It's not.
But that's an intentional awareness. And I'm really big on highlighting awareness when I talk to people, because a whole lot of what we do in this world, or what we choose not to do in this world, lies in the ability to be aware, right? If you're not aware, then you're gonna do whatever you want to do, and you're gonna find it justifiable.
Yep.
Because you're not aware of your actions, or you're not aware of the change that you're making, or anything like that. So, okay. So that's the real Dr. Jones. Love personified, forgivable. How long did it take you to get to that place? Because you said between the ages of 15 to 26.
I lived a life of hell.
Okay.
God knew how to reach me was through education. And even though I come from a household where you were supposed to go through K through 12 effortlessly, you're going to graduate from high school. But after that, higher education was never something that was on the table. So to be seen as like the outcast / black sheep, I've done some questionable things that in hindsight, I'm like, I'm glad my family still loves me. Right. But at the same time, I started taking this educational journey seriously in 2010, right before I made 30. And then from there, it was like God was reaching me in the classroom. Like, everything that was being taught as a theoretical framework started to come to me in terms of ministry and things that I was taught in my upbringing, Church of God in Christ, right? But even as a restorative justice practitioner, expert, and all those great things, and those titles are beautiful, it wasn't until my husband died in my arms, September 28, 2022, that I realized this restorative, redemptive journey is something I've been speaking on, training about, doing workshops, seminars, going across the world. But it wasn't until that moment that God said, this is what restoration looks like.
Wow.
So let's just say September 28th, 2022.
Okay. So that's when it started shifting for you. Things started changing.
I thought it had shifted before then.
Yeah.
But
it's normally a circumstance. It's normally a circumstance. I can attest to that. It's normally a circumstance. We think that, I always say this about the gym, like when you're working out, like if one of my best friends comes to visit me and we work out together, like I work out, I love working out. But when she come and she train me, I'm like, I ain't did nothing all this time, because when I'm done working out with her, my body feeling it. And I feel like I done did all this stuff all this time, but I haven't done anything until that circumstance hit and you come here and you train me. So it's kind of the same thing with what you're talking about. It's normally we think that we are healed. We think that we are redeemed. And not that God hasn't redeemed us. We're not aware of the redemption. We think that all of these things have happened until a circumstance hits, which almost test our redemptive possibility, right? Or have we really forgiven, right? I remember looking at the Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and Medea said, she said, how do you know that that she hasn't gotten over? If you know you've gotten over somebody, you won't hurt them. You won't choose to hurt them. But if you choose to hurt them, then you haven't gotten over it yet. And so it's like, I thought I forgave that person. I thought I was beyond the situation, but every time I see that person, I get triggered or something like that. So yeah, it's that circumstance or that triggering situation that kind of brings you to that place. All right, so I forgot to do our rapid fire questions. So before we move further, I do want to do these rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So rapid fire, very simple, real quick. Favorite movie?
The Temptation.
Mine too.
You are playing with
I'm
me.
not playing.
I'm losing you.
Girl, ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. Girl, listen.
That is my movie.
Me and I was watching it the other night, and my husband came in the room. He was like, "You watch that every time it come on." I said, "Every time,
Every time, like it's the first time.
every time." That and The Help, both of those movies, I can watch it every time. Okay, cool. Favorite city to visit?
San Antonio.
Nice. I went to basic training there. Favorite music genre?
R&B.
Nice. Okay, cool. All right. So it wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
No, not too bad at all.
Okay, so let's talk about Shaniqua, the businesswoman. So that's how I met you.
Mhm.
I met you as Shaniqua, the businesswoman. You have, and I don't know much about your business journey except for what I've seen on, and we've been friends on Facebook for a few years now. And as transparent as you are about your family life and your personal life and what you need and what you go, I mean, I think I respect you so much because you teach people the epitome of we have not because we ask not, right? And God provides for us, but sometimes we have to get out of the way of pride and
Ooh.
embarrassment or I can figure it out on my own, and that's just not you. Right? You have learned to put yourself out there and put yourself on the line and let people know what you need. And that makes other people uncomfortable. And so
Very.
they respond to you, I'm sure, and like or they won't respond at all. They're responding to me like, why are you doing, stuff like
what's
that?
going on with you?
Right.
Go back to the
Because
the last post.
Right. Because as people, we try to protect ourselves, this seemingly like I don't know, cloud of protection when there really is a need.
Mhm.
And we don't allow God to use people to, help us. So
Yeah.
anyway, Shaniqua, the businesswoman, tell me about who you are in that vein. Tell me about your business. Tell me about how that came about, and tell me about how that's made you from the successful standpoint.
So good news is that Purple Path, which is Black owned by me, will be 5 next month. So I'm grateful for
Congratulations.
that because statistics show that it's hard for Black owned businesses to sustain past 3 years, and here we are making it at the 5-year mark. So I'm the founder and CEO of Purple Path, and Purple Path is a for-profit. I want to be clear because a lot of times, and I've noticed this, that when Black women have organizations, people are automatically prone to believe it's a nonprofit. And I'm not shaming anyone that's a nonprofit, but Purple Path is for-profit. And the work that we do is really helping people utilize restorative justice and restorative practices, which we could probably get into in a moment to kind of give people a gist of what that pertains to how to walk away from trauma, not just PTSD or what we also consider PTSD, which is persistent traumatic stress environments, meaning that there's nothing past about the trauma, is current trauma. So how do you walk away from these traumatic experiences in a healthy way that's conducive to meet your needs so that you can be whole again or as whole as possible? And the use of doing that is the tools and resources and skills rooted in restorative justice, which is an indigenous framework, saying that there's going to be circumstances that come about that will harm, there's a misunderstanding, miscommunication. We could think of all reasons why people can't get along. And a lot of times it's because you can't get along with yourself. So it's doing that internal work so we could do the external work so that, again, you could be whole again or as whole as possible. It's saying that we want to bring all people that's been harmed by a specific situation together so they can be humanized, because many times we have been dehumanized for whatever reason because of all the isms in the world. And being able to do that in a way that not just humanizes, but we operate from a place of integrity, high integrity. So that work is amazing. I've been able to work with MacArthur Foundation in regards to workplace trauma and ostracism. We've been able to work with Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. We've been part of the whole child task force that was that Governor Pritzker appointed me to as a restorative justice expert. So it's a lot of great work that's being done, but I want people to understand the essence of restorative justice is a way of life. It's not just something that's for our youth in schools or for our juvenile detention centers or any type of legalities involved. But once you get to the root of some of your whys, why, and then being able to be solution oriented using restorative justice. So that's purple path. The journey as a businesswoman has been, I've had some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows. When it comes down to understanding the logistics and the behind the scene work that some people just don't operate with integrity. Or I don't do clicks, but we live in a day and age where, it's like the big girls club or the big boy club, whatever the case may be. Um so being able to work through those barriers and still be able to stand my ground and be able to do what God has called me to do, even if it makes me uncomfortable. I get the idea that, especially if you ever came from a scarcity mindset, and shout out to Dr. Tanya about that scarcity mindset, but a poverty mindset, because of your life circumstances, it can put you in a frame of mind to not take the risk. And sometimes you take the wrong risk because you're operating out of self instead of the spiritual discernment or knowledge and wisdom that God has given you. So being able to move out of your own way. People ask me what my business plan is. Prayer. It's God. If it's not God, it's a no for me. Even if Shaniqua want to say like, yeah, I want to do that, but I don't, because it doesn't work in my favor anyway. So I already know what the outcome. I've lived a life of being a rebel without a cause, and now I'm just a rebel with one.
What do people say when they
don't like me?
I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask because I feel you. So I have this whole mindset of it's uncommon, and it's an unorthodox mindset approach to where networking. So I'm big. I can get with networking because of the space that I work in, right? I have to do, because I still work in a space where networking is something that people want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I run my businesses and ministries and anything else off of a different premise and thought process. And that is, I don't need to network and hustle and do all of this to meet people and to get somebody to bring my name up. I just need to make sure that I am in flow with God and doing what He wants me to do and obeying every move and it took me a while to get there, because the old me, the person who I was when I was doing all these other businesses, was not that person. I literally, my very first job here in Chicago was because I met somebody at a networking event through the Chamber of Commerce, the Chicago Chamber of Commerce. And then it just kind of, he helped open up a door for me to get my first job. And then every job that I've had from there has been because of someone that I've known, a relationship, not necessarily networking, but just someone that I've met in the space. And so every job that I've had from that point on, but I haven't had to network for that. That was just me being in the place that God wanted me to be in and meeting people. And so I wanted to follow up with that question. How do people respond when you say, prayer is how I run my business? Prayer is how I do what I do. How do they respond to that?
It's twofold. Some is like, oh my gosh, thank you for that, Doc, shedding light on that, because that's something I feel, but not something I vocalize because of the shame associated to it, because it's not the norm, unorthodox. I've always been seen as unorthodox. And then you have the people like, okay, let me know how that worked out for you.
Right. Because they're still in the mindset of, well, that's not how traditional business goes. And you're not going to
sustain.
Yeah.
And I'm still here.
Yeah.
It's only God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. So Purple Path, where'd that come from? What a name.
My husband. No, I don't think people know that enough about him. And that's why I go so hard for him. My husband's favorite color is purple. And if I got to be totally honest, when I first met him, I'm like, I would have never guessed a man like you favorite color being purple. The stigma that, that's a girly color, or like, you a man's man. I can't see you like, the color purple. So that's that piece. And I started gravitating to the color purple because I liked how it looked on him.
Right.
So purple became my favorite color. And then as I was in my doctoral program, he was like, I just love the path that you're on. It's like the purple path.
Oh, wow. So he literally.
And I've been rocking and rolling with that ever since.
I don't think a lot of people put time and energy into developing like thinking about what their brand represents. Like the name that their brand represents. Because I love asking these kinds of questions of, what's the meaning behind what you represent? What's the meaning behind what you go so hard for? And almost all the time, there's some type of a story that comes behind it.
That's the beginning of it. And when you look at it, my master's is in criminal justice. Co-created the very first restorative justice certificate program in Illinois.
Congratulations.
And that was in 2013. Thank you. And then when I went on to get my doctorate of education, I blend those two worlds together. And he just saw how that transformation was happening from a personal to a professional perspective. And he like, this is the purple path, that path to restoration. And then when you look at my 5 brand colors, they're my 5 children. Wow. Yep. The pink, the orange, the yellow, the turquoise. I said purple, pink, orange, yellow, turquoise. Yep. Those 5 colors.
Bright. Your brand colors are very bright.
And they're my 5 children. They represent, if you look at the psychological perspective of the colors, it's my children.
That's another thing that people don't take time to do when they pick colors. They look at the color wheel and research the psychological meaning behind colors, because that's the feeling that someone's going to get or the type of feeling that you would like someone to get when they see your brand and when they come across your brand.
And then the other piece to it too with the colors, before we move on, is that for people who know, my mom was a minister, Church of God in Christ. She did not play any games. And I don't know if people remember the caboodle boxes. They were created for like girls who like in their adolescence that love makeup and lip gloss. I couldn't do any of those things. The only thing I could wear was Carmex. So me having a caboodle box was almost like a sin.
Yeah.
But my brother was dating a young lady who did not know the severity of how my mama took religion and spirituality. So for Christmas, she had bought me a caboodle box.
Okay.
And I always wanted one, but I couldn't really say anything about wanting this caboodle box because I knew my mother would be against it.
Yeah.
That was really for fast girls.
Right.
Fast forward.
What did the caboodle box have in it?
Nothing. It was just like an organizer. It was like the caboodle box. You could carry it around, which it was real cool. Okay. Everybody wanted one at that particular time. It was almost as Barbie. But that was a caboodle box. It was like a little makeup. It didn't have the makeup kit in it, but it was like for that purpose. It was a container that you carry around. It was colorful. You could put little bedazzles on it, all that good stuff.
Okay.
So needless to say, the caboodle box was the same colors as my brand colors.
Oh, wow.
And so not only do it serve the purpose of representing my 5 children, but it remind me of that barrier that my mom had. It was like, she is a little girl.
Okay.
I shouldn't allow my spirituality or my religious walk with God to stop her from having something so simple.
Yeah.
And so I was grateful for my brother, girlfriend, turned wife at that time. I had my first caboodle box, was those 5 colors.
Yeah.
Which also
further. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can go on and on about the brand.
Yeah. So I want to know, I did an episode earlier about mental health trauma in the workplace, mental health trauma in the business space. And you kind of have been in both spaces because you had a job prior to having your business. So I kind of want to go a little bit in that direction for a while, because I know that you have a lot that you can talk about when it comes from mental health trauma. And how that plays a role. So I kind of want to know, like, what has been your experience with mental health trauma in the workplace amongst professional Black women? What do you see? What have you seen?
So I want to say rest in peace to Dr. Antoinette, who recently took her life based on some of the situations she had. And not only was this a situation in regards to like that received national attention, but she was somewhat a mentor of mine. I met her in 2010 when I was in my bachelor's program. And one of my mentors in the higher education sector was like, this is someone you need to know. She comes from the same community. You come from Harvey, all those great things. And when I met her, she was so adamant about like, stay the course, get all the degrees you can. I could see you, academic excellence, all these things. And so when you think about those conversations I had with her and how hard she went for academia and Black women in academia and getting your doctoral degree. And then this is what the result is. It's disheartening. So I got my doctorate, and I'm transparent. So I got my doctorate in 2016. My doctorate degree was paid for by the institution where I was working. So even though the pay wasn't great, the benefits were immaculate. I never had a FSA account, all these things that was like, oh my gosh, I made it. I might still be suffering financially, but I get all the perks of this, right? And I get my doctorate paid for. And I was only making $35,000. Okay. That was 2016. When I applied for my first job in 2016, I got the very first job I applied for. And it was the title. I'm not going to talk about the institution, but the title, I was the director of community engagement and diversity programs. It was like, oh my gosh, I made it. I was only making $38,000. And I became the Black mom on campus. Like I got kids. I don't need to, but I love the children. It was at a PWI. So, and it was during the sector of I'm voting for Trump and I love God too. And I go to a PWI. And so how do my Black students, how do they matriculate through this? How do they live through these circumstances when it's like I don't feel welcome and I don't feel like I am seen here or even heard? So that's how I became the Black mom on campus, making $38,000. And I pretty much lived there. In that same tone or same breath, some of the things I was experiencing that I kind of just put on the back burner because in my mind, I'm like, this too shall pass. I had one of the board members of that institution ask me how many men I had children by. Because I had 5 children. It was impossible for me to have all 5 of my children. Now, keep in mind, I do have 2 men that I have children by, but that was not appropriate whatsoever. And I spazzed out. I went straight to HR. When I say spazzed out, I spazzed out as the academic Shaniqua. I didn't spaz out like the Shaniqua from Harvey because that'd have been a different circumstance. I'd have been probably in handcuffs. But I went straight to HR. And even though that situation was handled quickly, it wasn't handled in a way that I felt humanized my experience. And then you also had someone who was in a higher authority than me, who, people who know me know, like, I love my hoodies and my gym shoes, but I'm gonna get the work done. And I dressed up one day and I was feeling myself and I was like, I had on this pink blouse and the little dally shoes, all that stuff that I do not do. And what went from me feeling great, I felt terrible because the compliment I received that they said was a compliment was like, oh, your pink blouse is the same color as the inside of your lip.
What?
I was like, okay, cool. Right. But it wasn't.
You don't really know, like,
what do you do with that?
You don't know what to say to that. You don't know. Are you supposed to say, oh, thank you?
Like, and I had to look like, right. Let's do a color match. Right. It was just one thing after another. Like when you think about it and you're able to put, sometimes you're so into what you're doing and you're so glad that you've made it outside of what your past circumstances were that you realize you're still in the trenches. You still are struggling. You're still trying to fight for your right to be seen and heard.
Right.
So, those are just 2 significant incidents. They're like heavy microaggressions that stuck with me, that when I left that institution, I went to be the head of deans at a charter school in Chicago on the South Side. And then from there, I became a district school admin. So and I could go on and on about my professional history that led to like, you know what, I have to fight this system differently. Purple Path is going to have to sustain us because I have to be able to come in and do the work and not be part of the work that need to be done. That's
what I was going to ask you. So here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like while you were building this business to restore the traumatic experiences of other people,
had to go through it.
You were going through it yourself, which in some way could be used or could be seen as a means to an end, kind of. God allowing you to experience certain things so that you have, I like to say, so that you become a subject matter expert even the more in what it is that you're trying to. And you don't necessarily want to go through anything like that, but it's just continual development, right? And you actually being able to see what's there, because people don't believe that stuff like that goes on unless they have the voiced experiences of somebody who's actually been in it, right? I'm telling you, this is what is going on in there because guess what? I've experienced it. And this is how I've experienced by this. So I know what you're saying is absolutely true. So yeah. So it sounds like that's what happened.
That is, and
what
to
pushed
this day,
you even further.
Even current day, like I'm real huge on advocacy as it relates to health equity for Black and brown folks because of what I experienced with my husband firsthand. That is definitely not the direction I was going in. But now it's like, what does healing and restoration look like for people, not just the caregiver, but for the person who has this firsthand experience and now they need to find a new way to live.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like I speak highly of my husband. He's like my 49-year-old baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to advocate for him until God takes me from this place.
So let's talk about that.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
So
let me get the tissue closer.
I know. Let's segue into probably one of the most difficult seasons of your life. So before we talk about that season, let's talk about the season that came before it, because you had two hits immediately, right? And while you were trying to recover from one hit, another hit came. And so I want to talk about Shaniqua, the daughter, and then I want to talk about Shaniqua, the wife.
Okay.
So let's talk about Shaniqua, the daughter. You already talked about how your mother raised you. Your mother was a Christian to the core.
To the core.
Christian to the core. She was a cogent Christian to the core, a mother who loved God, served God, and made sure that you was going to do it too. So tell us a little bit about that experience from childhood and just kind of like the relationship that you had with your mother as you were growing up.
Okay, so let me set the tone. My mom and my dad. My mom was 40 and my dad was 45 when I was born.
Oh wow, 40 and 45. Oh, child, they had no patience.
No,
trust me, they had zero patience.
My brothers were 13, 15, and 17.
Oh wow.
So can you imagine? Everyone is at a different age.
Yeah.
At probably it wasn't until I was 8 or 9 years old I realized what I was thinking was not true. I thought that people come into the world at different ages. I didn't know everybody because I don't see my parents as a newborn. I didn't see pictures of them as a newborn. I didn't see pictures of my brothers. And because everybody was so far ahead of me in terms of age and from a different generational context, I thought like, okay, when you were born at 13, you were born at 15, you were born at 17. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't have no real connection. Yeah. And I lived in that household where you was to be seen and I heard. And it was even a double whammy for me because I felt like I had to carry the burden of my generation. Oh, your kids your age. I'm like, I ain't even did nothing. I go to church every day. Like, what's going on? So, and my mom and my dad separated when I was 6. So when my mom decided to leave my dad permanently, they never divorced. They were just living. She went full blown. Like, only mother I know is the one who loved God. And everybody knew that I called my mother Jesus' little sister. And even though she did not like that, it wasn't until like maybe a year before she passed, she was like, you know what, that really is a compliment because you really saw me. I don't know any other mother. I've never seen you curse. I've never seen you get loud. We went to church 6 days a week. I didn't start wearing pants. I was in high school, my sophomore year of high school at that. So it was just a lot of different things. Can you imagine, being on the basketball team trying to do a layup and a skirt down to your ankles? It's just too much.
Yeah.
So that kind of set the tone for that. And when I turned 15, she allowed me to get my first perm, allowed me to get contacts. And I don't know if that was like, I want to give way a little bit because she's a little girl, but that probably was the worst thing that could have happened because I went from being like, oh, little Shaniqua, the church girl, to like, dang, look at Kwa. That was my nickname. I went from Shaniqua to Kwa, and all the boys loved me.
Oh.
And I didn't know, and
that attention,
and I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I had my first child at 17.
So you said, that takes us back to that 15 to 26 time frame where you said you were just like wild. And
I was, you can think it, I'm not gonna say, I'm not trying to glorify it, but yeah I've lived quite a hard life. Okay. I made life hard for myself. There was a lot of things I could control and I didn't. I suffer from a mental illness that I don't suffer from now. I live with a mental illness, but I was suffering then. I didn't have the context for postpartum depression. I had a child at 17. I was already depressed. So having a child didn't make it like that. I want us to know, like, giving birth to a child is not going to take away whatever feelings and emotions you have. You might feel good in that moment, but if you don't get to the root, it's not going to sustain.
Yeah.
That poverty mindset along with a mental illness. And then I had my second child at 19, and people fail to realize, like, whatever I experienced, my mother experienced firsthand, not secondhand. Especially when we talk about a Black girl giving birth in a typical Black home, usually that mom, if she has a good working relationship with her mom, that mom becomes a second mother, not a grandmother. So whatever I experienced, she experienced too. She was like my child's father, doctor's appointments, things of that nature. And so she saw things unfold for me in a way, like she prayed. Most of her prayers were about me, like almost as if she didn't have other children, because the hell that she thought she would have had with her boys, she had it with me. Like going to lock up every weekend, cursing folks out. I was irate. If you had something to say, I had some. So when people see me now, the so restorative and forgiving, like, what?
That's why they can't understand. Yeah, that's why they can't understand.
Because I'm advocating for you. If you this is my neighborhood. We're not doing none of this. You know, it was one of them. Like I had that mindset. I had a Nino Brown mindset, basically. Yeah. I just didn't wear the turtleneck and the gold chains.
Yeah.
But and so it wasn't until I was getting ready to write my very first self-published book in 2016. My family knew I was gifted. Very, like I'm cut from a different cloth. And I gave everybody the PDF version of the book before it released, because keep in mind, I'm telling my life story, that you're in this, you're part of my life journey. Even though I'm not saying names, if people know me, they're like, oh, she's our oldest brother, you talking about Levert, whatever. Or my mom might feel some kind of shame associated to like, maybe I didn't raise her right. No, you raised me perfectly well. These were decisions I made.
Right.
And I think that's what's so important for parents to understand, like, do your very best.
Right.
At the same time, once you've done all you can do,
right,
what else are you looking for? Like, that I don't feel guilty or shame. Like as a mom, when my children do something, I'm like, I know I did right by them. Like,
But
so
it's almost like a journey though that a child has to go through, because if you think about it, the Bible says train up a child in the way that they should go. When they're old, they won't depart from it. So your mother can rest in knowing that she trained you up right.
Yeah.
Right. You may have departed when you were young, but the Bible says, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. So now you're older and you've been redeemed.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I'm so grateful for, some things had to take place where I imagine getting this doctor degree, the highest degree, it meant a whole lot to me. But if people are not a part of academia, or this is not a part of their makeup or their upbringing, what I value may not be what you value, even though we come from the same household. You raised me. So nobody from my mother and my brothers didn't show up when I got my doctorate. It was my husband and my children. Because it was like a slap to the face. Because mind you, all this is happening simultaneously. I'm graduating with my doctorate degree and I'm releasing this book the next day. And that book kind of just shed the light on, like, damn. And so the shame and guilt was like, well, we're not showing up. And they didn't. Fast forward, I also had to hold myself accountable, because I was expecting my mother to forgive me based off a conversation we never had, because the actions was, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm traveling the world. I'm making sure our bills are paid. I'm making, like, I'm looking after you. I'm being the studious daughter that you wanted me to be. And I know I'm not just because you wanted me to be, because I'm grateful to be that.
So you were expecting your mother to forgive you based off of actions that you were doing to show her,
and not a conversation,
but not a conversation where forgiveness actually takes place.
That part.
Did y'all get that? I just want y'all to hear that. This is a part of the healthy woman's journey, is you can't expect people to forgive you or to extend forgiveness or to even consider forgiveness if you're not open and willing enough to sit down and at least have a conversation. And if the opportunity doesn't present, like some people are in situations where they can't sit down and have conversations with people, right? So sometimes you're not going to be able to have a conversation with someone where you can openly voice your opinion and let them know how you feel. But you have to get to a point where there's not like this unspoken expectation. Because I always tell people don't disappoint anybody. You disappoint yourself because of the expectation that you placed with regard to that person.
That's the
and
word.
They may or may not even know that expectation is there. But you're like, oh, they disappointed me because they didn't come and see about me. Well, number one, did they know that was important to you? And number two, did they tell you they was going to do that? Right? So I think it just kind of goes hand in hand with what you just said. Yep. So sorry about that.
No sorries. We good. And I'm just grateful that God allowed our relationship to be restored. So from 2018 to 2022 to the day she took her last breath, it was amazing.
I was going to ask you, how was your relationship with your mom before
When
she
I
passed?
say she was always my best friend, we just had to take a break from each other.
Yeah.
But 2018 to 2022, inseparable.
God has a way of doing that when he knows that eventually he's going to bring someone home.
Yep. And I knew April of 2022, I was like, she's not going to make it through the year.
Yeah.
She's tired. Yeah. Her body is weak. And so I left my full-time job to make sure however long I was going to be there every day.
Did you guys have talks and conversations?
Yes, like down to her funeral, I had everything in a spreadsheet. I was asking questions that she was open to answering, like the color, who's speaking, where do you want your funeral to be held? Who, are you okay being buried where my dad is buried? Because I know y'all didn't have the best of relationship, but he's a veteran, and like this is gonna be $7,000 if having these real tough conversations, but it wasn't tough.
But that you were willing to have because this
our
is
whole
so
obituary, like everything she wanted to be said, who down to who she wanted to sing, stand, or who she wanted to be her musician, or who eulogize her, everything she wanted, even if it was like they don't sing anymore, but I'm pretty sure they come out of retirement for you. This
is conversations that people should have, even if your parent isn't sick, right? Have these like people feel like they act like death is so taboo. Like one thing is for certain, two things for sure. If the Lord don't come through the rapture, we getting up out of here through death, right? So we got to have the conversation, but it's like people are so taboo about having those conversations where they don't want to sit down and say, hey, and then when it's all said and done, you're trying to plan a funeral based on what you think that person. Like when my grandmother passed away, my grandmother had put her funeral together years and years. Obviously, by the time she died, most of the people on the thing were dead. So we had to figure out, my family who planned the funeral had to figure out how to stick people in there. But the funeral itself and everything about it was paid for because my grandmother took that step to do that. But if that's not possible, we have to get to a point where we are healed enough or where we're open enough to say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, honey, hey, son, hey, whatever, let's talk about this because it's gonna come, right? And when that person is no longer here, you're trying to figure out what they would have wanted instead of having those conversations. And so I think that the journey that you and your mom went on, that the Lord allowed for you guys to go. My dad and I had that same conversation, not that same conversation, but we had that same experience because I had a very turbulent relationship with my dad for a few years because of just some stuff that he went through with my mom. My mom went through with him, and I'm an only child biologically. And I just saw my dad do some things that just weren't right for my mom. But he and I had a really great relationship. But because that's my mama, I had a problem with him. And so we had a very turbulent relationship for a few years, and we were estranged for a little while. And then in time when we started talking again, I felt like I needed him to pay for it, right? So I would make him give me money, and I would, maybe manipulate the situation a bit. Like I'm grown enough to say the things that I did, manipulate situations because I wanted him to feel bad about what he did. And I felt like he needed to pay me back for that. And then my dad got sick with cancer, and I had to take care of him, and he had to move into my home. And the Lord, like my mom and my dad were divorced, but they had the kind of relationship where they couldn't be married, but they could be friends. And so my mom, my grandmother moved into my house with me to help him. And the Lord essentially gave my dad back his family for like a couple of months. And I was able to have a conversation with my dad, apologizing to him, laying on his chest, crying with him, telling him I was sorry, asking him what he wanted. He was like, I don't want to be buried. I want to be cremated, like telling me different things and forgiving one another. Yeah. And he was like, you don't need to forgive me. I'm sorry for what I did, having these conversations, albeit at a time where he was going to die, and that was the last like full conversation that we had where he was lucid enough to have a conversation. But the Lord gave me that back, and the Lord gave him to me for that moment, and allowed my mom and my dad to have even though they weren't married, allowed us to have our family. And then like literally like a month later he died. But God allows that sometimes because he knows the end. He knows it's going to happen. And he's all about family. He's all about relationship. And so I'm glad that you and your mom had that time.
That's my girl, Mother Odia B. Anderson. That's my girl.
I love it. So so your mom passed away when?
September 2nd. Her funeral was September 9th.
2022. And then you got through that.
Or so I thought I was getting through that.
Okay.
I was messed up.
Okay.
Be honest, I started drinking
after your mom died.
After she died, like, and it wasn't like intervention drinking, but just like that's out of character for me. I'm not a drinker.
Yeah.
And then my husband had reached out to some of my girlfriends, was like, my son, my biological son, is the favorite. Everybody know he's the favorite grandchild. He's in school in New Orleans. He done went back to school. Now I'm like, as a mom, I need to, even though I need someone to check on me, I need to check on my boy because I know how it is impacting me. And he's not here. He's there in New Orleans by himself. So they arranged for us to do a day trip to New Orleans. So fast forward, mom is buried September 9th. September 25th, my husband, I go back a day before. September 24th, I got my makeup and stuff done. I was going to try to, just do some brand stuff, just get back in the flow. My photographer canceled on me. So my husband was my photographer. Show you how God works. But he was like, when I do your pictures, I don't want to do them in color. I want to do them in black and white because everything you do is in color. Brand color. Yeah. And when I walk in the room, like just everything, right?
Yeah. When I look at you, I see color. Bam, everything's in color.
And I'm playing Jane today.
Right.
So I said, okay, cool. And I wasn't with it, but I'm like, here's my photographer and he's my husband. All right, we're going to do this black and white. When he took the pictures, I was like, I saw something different. He's like, see, you've never had me behind a camera. You always have people who are not a part of your life to capture something that they can't really capture because they don't know you. I know you. So that's September 24th.
Yeah.
We go out to dinner that night to Chug a Lug in Glenwood. It was pretty new. We going out to dinner. I have my little notebook because everybody know I love to take my notes, even though this is supposed to be like, we're supposed to have a little fun, but this was also like business too. Like, what are our next steps? Now that we didn't get this grant, now that mama is gone, are we still going to take these trips? He paid our trip to go to Amsterdam that night. He like, I just hit submit. Boom, we going to Amsterdam. You need this. And then some other things hubby.
Okay.
Working out logistics. Okay. We getting ready to be empty nesters. So we got how we going to support her in her next part of her journey. All these different things as mom and dad. September 25th, next day, he's in the bathroom. The dog is scratching at the door, which the dog never does, which is little Rosie. And I'm looking like, why is she scratching at the door? My husband is in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet, blood clots coming through his nose, the size of cuties, the little oranges, size of cuties coming through his nose. That's filling up one of them little Dollar Tree trash cans, little plastic ones you could just toss out. It's full of blood. He like, I'll be all right. No, you won't. Like, not this kind of blood.
Right.
And we talking about, let's talk about it. We're talking about a black man who's from Arkansas. I'm giving you these little demographics, kind of shed light on how there's twofold. There's these health inequities because of systemic racism, but then there's also the stigma of I'm not going to the hospital. I pray about it, and or they're gonna kill me anyway, so I might as well just figure it out on my own. Right. So my husband had that type of mindset, like I'm not going to the hospital. But I end up calling my son, like, hey, your daddy is, he needs to go to the hospital. Maybe you could say something. He said something. He's like, all right, cool. Go to the hospital. We go to the hospital. We sitting there hours. He got he has everything. I'm like, take all this with you so they can see like the full scope of what's going on. And they like, oh, you got a sinus infection. You just need to get a humidifier and probably a little antibiotic and you'll be fine.
That's what the hospital said.
Yes. That's September 25th. September 26th, there's no bleeding. That's that Monday. We're like, okay, cool. September 27th, I go to New Orleans for a day trip to go be with my son. Had a beautiful time, but I broke down when it was time to take flight to come back home because I was missing my mama. But I'm like, it's something else that I feel heavy. September 28th, 6:30 a.m., my alarm go off because I do 7 a.m. prayer calls. And my husband rolled over and was like, you just can't take a day off, can you? Like he fussing at me. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let me call Janae, who was my virtual assistant at the time, and have her cancel whatever I had going on for that day. That's 6:30 a.m. It wasn't even 8:30, maybe 9. I hear him take this deep breath in and never exhale. So I start shaking him. And I'm like, DJ, quit playing. DJ, why don't like you don't even play like this, so stop. Because in my mind, this could never be what I think it is. I jump out the bed.
Because you think it's a
well, I'm thinking playing, but I'm like he having a heart attack.
Yeah. Okay.
I run, I jump out my bed, run across the hallway. I don't know if y'all remember the Kool-Aid man from back in the day with the big red pit. They said I ran in her room like the Kool-Aid man, knocked the door off the hinges. Like something wrong with daddy, y'all. Call 911. They call 911. We live in a small village. The EMTs get there probably within 2 minutes. As soon as they walk in the bedroom, they take him from the bed down to the floor, cut his shirt open, and the first thing I could see is redemption that's tattooed across his chest. And in that moment, I'm not sure, when you have these different gadgets, like with the iPhone, you can focus in on the matter at hand and everything else is blurred out. That's exactly what God did for me in that moment. He didn't
let you see redemption.
It was just like in 3D coming off his chest. And God was like, your mama is gone. She can't pray you through this one. Your husband, who I sent to protect you and keep you and guide you from an earthly perspective, can't do that right now. It's just me and you. What you gonna do? Because this is his redemption process. This is yours too. I need you to understand. I need you to be patient for the process, for the promise.
Patient for the process. Patient through the process.
For the promise. And ever since then, I wiped them tears. I mean, I've been hurt, like it's been hurtful.
Yeah.
And we rushed him to the hospital. As he was in the ambulance, he died a second time.
So he died the first time. He died when you heard him and not go back in. Yep. Go back out.
They resuscitated him in the bedroom. They had to resuscitate him in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And then when I got to the hospital, they told me he was brain dead, that he had no quality of life and I need to pull the plug. And I was like, well, I haven't seen him. Like, this is me trying not to cry. I'm like, I ain't seen him yet. And I've been with him forever and a day. So let me see him for myself before y'all just sit here talking about I need to pull the plug.
Right.
And trying to keep the kids calm, trying to make phone calls to say, get here. This is serious. This is not COVID. This is not a little sinus infection. He's literally died twice.
Right.
When I walk in the room, I can't even see his body really. He's covered in ice packs and tubes everywhere and blood. Like they didn't even do a good job in cleaning him up. It looked like a crime scene. And I just laid on him and said, God, what would you want me to do? Because we never had this conversation. We just had days before we just mapped out our trips.
Amsterdam.
Yeah, like this was not part of the.
Yeah, this wasn't it.
And I just said, God, whatever your will may be. And I said, DJ, if you could hear my voice, move something. And he moved his arms, and the doctor was like, "Oh, that's involuntary movement." It was another word they used, but that's basically what it was. And for like a whole week, I was fighting to keep him alive because they wanted me to pull the plug. All the reports, from a neurological perspective, everything just pointed to like death, basically.
Yeah. But you you were like, I'm not doing it.
I reached out to shout out to Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton and her entire team who helped me to get him signed off to either be airlifted or transported to another hospital where our primary care physician was. So he was from I can't say the hospital he was at, but from that hospital to Silver Cross Hospital, it took us about a few days to get him, go through the whole process. He had to get the feeding tube and trach and all that put in before he could be airlifted, whatever the case may be, to go to Silver Cross. This happened September 28th. He gets to Silver Cross October 8th. And then October 10th, he had to have emergency surgery because he went into septic shock because the procedure was done incorrectly. And he went into septic shock. And they told me he had a 95% chance of not making it because his body has already been through too much trauma. And he made it. He made it. He had to be cut from the chest down to his groin because the tube been dislodged and all this other stuff happened. And once I got past October 10th, I was on fire. Like, I'm not going. I was documenting the process. I was buying books every day off Amazon. I was buying a new book. Like, you read chapter 1, give me your annotated notes. You read chapter 2, send them to me, put in the spreadsheet. This is what the doctor said, but this is what, but this is what God said. Like, I had scriptures to go along with everything that the doctors were saying was not going to happen. And I had a scripture for it. Mm-hmm. And he was in intensive care 105 days, came home January 11th of last year. So when he came home, he had a trach, he had a feeding tube, he had an oxygen tank, he had an oxygen machine, he had an air compressor. It was so intimidating. I have a doctorate of education. I don't have a medical doctor. Right. And I'm like, God. Yeah. And so let's talk about the health inequities, because when he came home, because of where we live, we didn't either. You had a situation where nobody wanted to come out that far to service him, or by paper, it looks so intimidating, like this man should be dead and gone. Right. So I'm definitely not about to, like, right. what are we doing? Point?
Because I don't want to make the mistake.
Right.
And then something happens.
And now we're recipients of Medicaid. We're relying on the state because I left my job to take care of my mom full time, not knowing that none of these circumstances are going to be down the road. Mm-hmm. So we literally nursed him back to health ourselves. We had a nurse that came out, but she was ill-equipped because she got a degree during COVID. And so she didn't know trach care. We learned trach care through YouTube.
Girl, when I say YouTube University,
I mean, I could go
ought to be accredited.
We learned how to unclog his feeding tube. Like, we learned a lot on our own by trial and error. I made my own paste to make sure he didn't have skin breakdown. I cleared out our savings account to get equipment. And mind you, I got reimbursed for some things, but when you're in the trenches, you just like, if I got it, I'm trying to save his life. I'm trying to make this as comfortable, and I don't know how long this is going to be.
Yeah.
I had students who came out to the house, helped me get stuff, situated before he came home. That when he came home January 11th, we had like a big old, like, everybody, like, we were outside waiting for the ambulance to pull up. And it's just been God has been amazing in my life. And I have no regrets.
The way that I see this, the way I see this is, unfortunately, God will go to extremes to draw us closer. And here's the thing. When your mother, and you can tell me how right or how wrong I am. Oh my goodness. I'm looking at a picture of DJ when he was in, bless his heart. And now I see a picture of him now, of how he's looking now. And he's just like, dang, they're cussing you out and telling you to leave him alone.
Yes.
But God will go to the extreme to get you to understand that dependence is on him now. Because here's the thing, your mother was
that was my go-to. She was the prayer warrior.
That was your dependency almost, right? Not that she took the place of God, but she took the place of God in certain ways, right?
I'm with you.
And so now she's gone. And God is like, okay, so I'm going to allow her to be in a situation, because Jeremiah 29:11 says, and I have to often remind myself and people of this, the situation is never going to harm you because the Bible says that. It's not me saying that. It's not just some random church person saying, oh, it's not going to hurt you. No, the Bible says that the plans that I have for you are not to harm you.
Amen.
Right? They are to give you hope and a future, and expected end. So your husband, from what I see, and I'm just speaking into existence because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in a year with him, but we believe that God hasn't brought him out of all of that trauma to then take him out of here, right? It has to be an expected end to this story.
Yes.
But the whole purpose of it all was to get Shaniqua to where you just described. For everything that the doctor said, I had a scripture. For everything that the people said that didn't align with what God said, I went to God, right? It was almost like you made God your default because you didn't have any other choice.
Yeah.
You couldn't go to your mom and say, Mama, pray me out of this, because your mama was just gone like a month ago.
Not even a month. It was 26 days.
26 days prior to your husband. Like, so, and people will say, Shaniqua, that ain't the God we serve. It is the God we serve. That is the God we serve.
I should be an insane asylum, just based off what I experienced. And that's not even, because we talked about me as a daughter, we talked about me as a wife, but even me as a mom, it's been like we had truck repossessed. Because mind you, I can't work now. I'm taking care of my husband. And we had one truck left. So I was like, fine. My daughter got ran off the road in my truck. So now she's hospitalized. My husband's still fighting to live. And then I had another daughter, like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm going to check out. You know, it was just like, I can't. And then we had another daughter had a stroke. So it was
it's one thing, like a domino effect of all of this.
And I would just have to just go walk in the bathroom because that was the only place that, you know, our whole home has been redesigned to accommodate my husband, which I'm not complaining whatsoever, but that bathroom is the only place I could really call my own. I would just walk like, all right, God, look in the mirror, like, what will you have of me today? What kind of strength? What tools do I need in my tool belt for today? I'm not even thinking about, you know, tomorrow, today. What do you need from me?
Right. Right.
People ask me, who's my business mentor? I mean, I have mentors. God, right who is my everything?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't do this without you.
And so I think that hopefully this brings perspective to people when they now see your Facebook profile and your Instagram profile. Because when we talk about purpose, the world will have us thinking that purpose is about self-gratification and self-satisfying, or the world will have us thinking that when you do, what is it? I can't even think of the technical word right now, but giving away money and all of that, the world makes you think that that's what's purposeful about your life. As long as you're living a life that has meaning. No, 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 no. Those of us who have been created by God and those of us who live in Christ, our purpose is to point people back to Him. Mm-hmm. Our purpose is to grow, expand heaven. Our purpose is to pick up the finished work that was left when He ascended and when it decided. You know, so at the end of the day, your Facebook profile, your platforms, the way that you transparently communicate in a responsible manner, always at the end, you say God is. And I know the story behind that with the song and all of that. But now I personally, after listening to your story and hearing the intricate details, I understand that what other people might not even allow themselves to know or might not know because they don't know the details of your story, why God is. God is at the end of every single post. I would probably say 98% of the time, you put God is. And now I understand why God is. And that's what I think God was trying to get you to see.
I see it now.
He is.
I can see clearly now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we still, you know, it's still, I still have my hardships, but when I wake up and I can say good morning to my husband, he say good morning back. When they told me there will always be a delay.
Yeah.
And there's nothing delay about his conversation whatsoever. Sometimes he's in conversations I don't want him to be in.
Yeah.
I could be talking to a friend. He'd be like, you should just hang up. Wait. And they'll laugh and take it, you know, with a grain of salt. Yeah. It's like, he's talking.
He's talking. Yeah. Something that he wasn't supposed to be able to do.
Yep. They told, and they had, because the way the tubing was put when they intubated him, it did damage to his vocal cords. Mm-hmm. So they said, even if he was to speak again, it would be so soft to the point where they have to put a device in to help strengthen his voice. We don't have any. And
and here's the thing, another thing, people have to realize that the doctors have to say what they say because they're doctors, right? Mm-hmm. They're going by science. This is what it looks like. This is how it is, which gives God the ability and the opportunity to say, okay, we know what they say, but this is how you know it's a miracle. Mm-hmm. This is how you know that I'm in control, because none of what they said, which is absolutely justifiable and founded on science and what the data says, God says no. Mm-hmm. This is how it's going to end, which further allows you to be able to settle yourself in knowing that God truly is. So we only got like 3 more minutes. This has been good. I've never gone all the way to the hour of the next, but I just want you to tell me, where are you now? And giving light to the platform of the podcast and what we focus on: physical, mental, emotional health, spiritual health, all of that. Where are you now with regard to all of that?
So my favorite scripture is, to whom much is given, much is required. And in this life, much will be required of us. And it might not have to be a heinous situation or something that's egregious as to what I experienced, but I've been able to give God my all. So we can have gurus, we can have experts, we can have social media because we know all these things have their different platforms, whether it's toxic or not. But put God at the forefront of everything you do. Everything from physical development, financial development. Like I literally don't walk with a scarcity mindset anymore. I might, from a human perspective, because of things that have happened, I might feel uncomfortable in that moment, but it's just a moment because God equipped me with the right set of tools, skills, and resources. To not, I don't believe in bad days. I have bad moments. So in essence, just take God everywhere you go. Like that takes me back to one of the old school gospel songs, and it's evident in my life, and I hope it's evident in yours.
Well, y'all, I am just full. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful
Same.
for you. You are a gem. You make me teary eyed. You are a gem. I love you.
I love you too.
I'm praying for you. Um, I'm here for you. Whatever you need. Um, if I can help you in any way possible, whatever, please reach out and let me know. Um, I am praying for you. Your husband he's going to bounce back. And all of this is not going to be for nothing.
Yep.
This is not going to be for nothing. We serve a God who is intentional.
Very.
And none of this is for nothing. It is for anything that God does is to always bring us closer to him. He wants us to depend on him. And unfortunately, he had to allow some pain to come to you um, in order for you to see it. But it was never anything that was going to harm you. And in the pain of it all, you are restored in so many different ways.
Man, yes.
You're restored in so many different ways. And that's the God that we serve. And that's the God that we will continue to serve until he decides that it's no more needed. And so, with that said, thank you so much for being here. You all, thank you again for joining us on the Healthy Woman Podcast, episode 3. It's your girl, Dr. Makeba, your host. Remember, if you have not shared this podcast episode out with someone, I bet you will now because it was good. Please make sure you share it out with at least one girlfriend, if not more than one, so that we can double our impact with the click of a share. And in the meantime, make sure that you join us back again for episode 4, where I will be talking to another amazing girlfriend of mine who will offer some dynamic conversation in the mental health space, and the emotional health space. So thank you all so much. As always, I love you and be encouraged. Peace.